The surgeon says, "I want to try the Pinnacle system." Then they walk out the door, and the scrub tech looks at me and says, "I've never set up this tray in my life." Marcus Chen, SynTera Orthopedics. In pharma, the physician writes the prescription and the pharmacist fills it. In orthopedics, the surgeon makes the decision, and then 6 people in the or need to execute it with a system they may have never seen. The scrub tech needs to know which instrument comes next in the procedure sequence. The circulating nurse needs to know how to open sterile packaging onto the back table. The SPD technician needs to know how to disassemble, clean, and reassemble the instrument trays. The OR director needs to know what storage space the consignment trays require. And in service is a structured educational session I run with the or team, typically 20-30 minutes, before the surgical day starts or at a lunch session. I walk through the instrument tray, name every instrument, demonstrate its function, show the procedure sequence. I answer questions. I leave behind a laminated tray map. Without this in service, the first Pinnacle case is chaotic. The scrub tech is unfamiliar with the tray. Instruments are called for in the wrong order. The surgeon is frustrated, and the rep, me, looks incompetent by association. With a good in service, the first case runs smoothly because the whole team is prepared, not just the surgeon. Agentforce educational activity logs track in-service completion by account and or team member. I need every key person trained before the first case at any new account. The multidisciplinary or team, everyone who touches the device. A total joint arthroplasty case involves a surgical team with distinct roles, each of whom interacts with the implant system in different ways. The surgeon selects components and makes implantation decisions. The scrub technician, first scrub, is sterile. They handle and pass instruments, open sterile packaging, manage the back table, and interact directly with the implant components. The circulating nurse, circulator, is non-sterile. They open supplies and implant packaging onto the back table, document the case, retrieve additional supplies from storage, and manage the or environment. The anesthesiologist or CRNA manages the patient's anesthesia. The SPD technician, not in the or decontaminates, inspects, and reprocesses instrument trays after each case. Each of these roles requires specific knowledge of a new implant system, and the device rep is the educational resource for all of them. In service education, structure, and AdvaMed compliance. A device in service is a structured educational session conducted by the manufacturer's representative for hospital staff, covering the safe and effective use of a medical device. In-service sessions for orthopedic implant trays typically cover instrument tray layout and instrument identification, naming each instrument, its function, and its position in the procedure sequence, tray assembly and disassembly, how to correctly reassemble instruments after SPD processing, sterile packaging identification, which packaging contains which components, how to open aseptically, size selection reference, tray map cross-referencing surgeon size templates to component locations, and first case support expectations, what the rep will and will not do in the room. Under the AdvaMed code, in-service education is a legitimate commercial activity. It is genuinely educational, directly related to the safe use of the product, and conducted at the hospital rather than at an entertainment venue. Educational materials, tray maps, procedure guides may be left with the hospital. The scrub tech relationship, the most operationally important non-surgeon relationship. Of all the or team members, the scrub technician has the most direct operational relationship with the device rep during a case. The scrub tech manages the sterile back table, requests instruments by name or gesture, and depends on the tray being correctly assembled and labeled to maintain the procedure's rhythm. A scrub tech who knows the Pinnacle tray, who can locate any instrument by name, who understands the procedure sequence, who knows which poly insert sizes are in which slot, is a case support asset that the rep cannot replicate unilaterally. A scrub tech who has never seen the tray before becomes a source of procedural friction that affects the surgeon's perception of the entire system. Investing in the scrub tech relationship, a personal connection, consistent in service, quick responses to instrument questions, pays dividends in every case that scrub tech covers. SPD training, the invisible case support function. The sterile processing department is the hospital function responsible for cleaning, disassembling, sterilizing, and reassembling surgical instrument trays after each use. SPD staff must correctly identify, disassemble, clean, inspect, and reassemble complex orthopedic instrument trays, often overnight, often for multiple competing surgical specialties simultaneously. Errors in SPD processing create case delays, tray not ready at case start, instrument damage, improper cleaning of delicate trial components, or sterility failures, improper assembly that creates contamination pathways. A device rep who trains SPD staff on proper tray disassembly and reassembly, who provides laminated cleaning and reassembly guides, who responds promptly when SPD flags a damaged instrument, reduces the operational failure risk that can derail a first case experience. SPD training is often overlooked by reps focused on surgeon relationships. It is one of the highest ROI non-clinical educational activities in the orthopedic role. Laminated tray maps and leave-behind materials. In-service education for complex instrument trays is reinforced by permanent leave-behind reference materials that remain with the tray in the or SPD. The most effective format is a laminated tray map, a photograph of the instrument tray with each instrument labeled by name, cross-reference to its function and procedure sequence position. Tray maps allow scrub techs and SPD staff to verify tray completeness and correct assembly without calling the rep. From a compliance perspective, tray maps and instrument guides are legitimate educational leave-behinds under AdvaMed. They are clinical reference materials that support safe device use, not promotional materials. They do not contain pricing, promotional claims, or comparative messaging. In pharma, it's the PHRMA code. In devices, it's the AdvaMed Code of Ethics. Different industry, same principle. Chen, SynTera Orthopedics. The Advanced Medical Technology Association, AdvaMed, is the primary trade association for the medical device industry. Their code of ethics on interactions with healthcare professionals governs how device companies and their representatives engage with physicians, nurses, and other healthcare providers. The core prohibition: I cannot provide anything of value to a healthcare professional that could improperly influence their device selection decisions. What this means in practice: meals at educational events, appropriate if they are modest, incidental to a genuine educational purpose, and at the venue of the educational event. No restaurant dinners selected for their quality rather than their proximity to the program. Entertainment: no tickets to sporting events, concerts, or entertainment venues. Full stop. Consulting arrangements: legitimate consulting, surgeons on advisory boards, surgeons who proctor for us, surgeons who participate in educational events as faculty, requires a fair market value contract, a documented service, and payment that reflects the value of the service, not the surgeon's product decisions. Research grants and educational support, routed through the company, not the rep. Where devices diverge from pharma, the OR relationship creates gray areas that don't exist in a physician's office. I'm in the OR. I have relationships with surgical staff. Buying lunch for the OR team raises compliance questions that don't exist when a pharma rep drops off samples. Agentforce HCP engagement logs document every interaction and every transfer of value. AdvaMed Code of Ethics, the industry self-regulatory framework. The Advanced Medical Technology Association, AdvaMed, Code of Ethics on Interactions with Healthcare Professionals, is the primary voluntary compliance framework for the medical device industry, governing the commercial practices of AdvaMed member companies, which include the vast majority of major U.S. device manufacturers. The AdvaMed Code is the device equivalent of the PHRMA Code in pharmaceutical selling, establishing principles for appropriate HCP engagement. The purpose of interactions must be genuinely educational or commercially substantive. Transfers of value must not be designed to improperly influence device purchasing, prescribing, or use decisions. Entertainment of no independent value may not be provided, and consulting arrangements must reflect genuine services at fair market value. AdvaMed member companies, including SynTera, are expected to implement internal compliance programs consistent with the code and train all field personnel on its requirements. The meal and hospitality standard: modest, incidental, educational. The AdvaMed code permits meals as an incidental accompaniment to legitimate educational interactions, in services, clinical training sessions, product evaluations, but requires that meals be modest in value and incidental to the educational purpose, not the purpose itself. A working lunch during a 90-minute or staff and service training session is appropriate. A dinner at a fine restaurant following a 10-minute sales call is not. The code does not specify a dollar threshold, unlike the PHRMA code's $150 per person guidance. But internal SynTera compliance policy sets a per-person meal limit aligned with industry norms. Meals must be provided at the healthcare professional's usual place of business or a venue directly related to the educational activity, not selected for the quality of its food, wine list, or ambience. Or team appreciation lunches, food brought to the or lounge, recognizing the team after a busy week of cases, are a gray area that requires compliance review and documentation. Consulting arrangements and the FMV requirement. Device companies legitimately engage healthcare professionals in a range of consulting arrangements: surgical advisory boards, product development input, anatomical teaching faculty, cadaveric lab instruction, proctoring agreements, experienced surgeons training colleagues on new techniques, and speaker programs, educational presentations to peers. All such arrangements require three elements for compliance. 1. A legitimate need for the service, a genuine business reason that doesn't depend on the consultant's prescribing patterns. 2. A written consulting agreement specifying the service, deliverables, and compensation. And 3. Compensation at fair market value, a rate that reflects the market value of the service for a professional with the consultant's credentials, not a rate inflated to reward product use. FMV for orthopedic surgeon consulting is typically benchmarked against MGMA, Medical Group Management Association, salary data, and specialty-specific consulting rate surveys. A surgeon who begins implanting more SynTera products immediately after entering a consulting agreement is a compliance red flag. The arrangement must proceed and be independent of any prescribing pattern change. The Sunshine Act and Device Manufacturer Reporting. The Federal Physician Payments Sunshine Act, 42 U.S.C., Section 1320A7H, implemented as the Open Payments Program by CMS, requires manufacturers of drugs and devices to report annually all payments and transfers of value to physicians and teaching hospitals. Device manufacturer reports include consulting fees, speaker honoria, meals, educational grants, travel and lodging, royalties, and the value of items provided for promotional use. Open payments data is publicly searchable on the CMS website. Any physician can see what a manufacturer has reported paying them, and any patient, journalist, or regulator can see the payment relationships between surgeons and device companies. For medical device companies, where surgeon consulting and proctoring relationships are commercially significant, open payments reporting creates significant transparency. SynTera's compliance team manages the annual open payments reporting process. Field reps must ensure all HCP interactions are documented in agentforce to support accurate reporting. The OR relationship, a compliance gray zone unique to device selling. The physical presence of device representatives in operating rooms creates compliance dynamics that do not exist in pharmaceutical selling. Buying coffee for the or nursing staff, bringing snacks to the scrub tech lounge, hosting an or team appreciation event. All of these involve transfers of value to hospital employees who influence the operational environment in which device products are used, even if they don't make device selection decisions. AdvaMed guidance and SynTera compliance policy distinguish between appropriate relationship building, professionally appropriate interactions that don't constitute an inducement, and inappropriate inducements, transfers of value, intended to build a personal obligation that influences product support or use. In practice, the line is drawn at, is this interaction something that would occur in the same form if the rep didn't have commercial interest in that account? If not, it requires compliance review. CMS pays hospitals a fixed amount for a total knee replacement. That amount doesn't change based on which implant the surgeon uses. That changes everything. Chen, SynTera Orthopedics. Under Medicare's inpatient prospective payment system, total knee arthroplasty is reimbursed under MSDRG 470, major joint replacement of the lower extremity without major complication. CMS pays the hospital approximately $15, $17, $000, varies by geographic wage index and hospital characteristics, for the entire hospitalization. The implant is included in that fixed payment. If the Pinnacle system costs $5,800 per case and a competitor's system costs $4,200, the hospital's margin on the DRG payment is $1,600 lower with SynTera. That's not a hypothetical concern. That's a material financial impact when the hospital is doing 800 knee replacements a year. This is the bundled payment reality. My implant is a line item in a hospital's financial model, not a separately reimbursed cost. My response: total episode cost, not unit price. A system with higher per unit cost but lower revision rates, shorter operative time, and fewer post-acute care transfers may have a lower total episode cost than a cheaper competitor. CMS's Comprehensive Care for Joint Replacement Model, CJR, took this further. Hospitals and post-acute care providers were accountable for the entire episode cost over 90 days. Implant cost was only one variable. The reps who sell in this environment understand health economics. The ones who lead with product features get ground down on price. Agentforce account views surface each hospital's DRG mix and payer split, the context for every cost conversation. MSDRG reimbursement, the fixed payment framework for joint replacement. Under Medicare's inpatient prospective payment system IPS, hospitals are reimbursed for most inpatient procedures, including total joint arthroplasty, through diagnosis-related groups DRG. Each DRG carries a fixed national base rate, adjusted for the hospital's wage index, teaching status, and disproportionate share payments. For primary total knee and total hip arthroplasty, the relevant DRG is MSDRG 470, major joint replacement without major complication or comorbidity. CMS sets the national DRG payment rate based on estimated average cost. It does not reimburse the actual cost of the implant as a separate pass-through item. The hospital receives the same DRG payment whether it uses a $4,000 implant or a $6,000 implant. This fixed payment structure creates a direct financial incentive for hospitals to minimize implant cost. Every dollar saved on the implant improves the hospital's margin on that DRG, the implant cost line in hospital total joint margin analysis. For a hospital performing 800 primary knee replacements per year, a $1,600 difference in implant cost between two competing systems represents $1.28 million in annual cost difference, a material variance in any hospital's orthopedic line of business. Hospital supply chain teams and CFOs model total joint profitability at the DRG margin level. DRG reimbursement minus total variable cost, implant plus cement plus disposables plus or time plus nursing plus post-acute care, equals procedural contribution margin. A device rep who understands this model, who can build a defensible cost per case comparison and project total episode outcomes, has a fundamentally different commercial conversation than a rep who quotes unit price and describes product features. The ability to speak the language of hospital finance is increasingly non-negotiable in orthopedic device selling. Comprehensive care for joint replacement (CJR). The episode payment precedent. CMS's Comprehensive Care for Joint Replacement (CJR) model, which ran from 2016 to 2021 and has since been restructured under successor alternative payment models, held hospitals accountable for the total cost of care over 90 days following a joint replacement episode, including the inpatient stay, physician services, rehabilitation, and post-acute care. If the total episode cost across all providers and care settings exceeded CMS's target price for that hospital, the hospital was responsible for a portion of the excess. This model made the post-acute care component of joint replacement historically the largest driver of total episode cost variability, a hospital finance priority. Under CJR, hospitals that could reduce their 90-day episode cost through reduced post-acute care utilization, lower readmission rates, and shorter length of stay gained financial benefit. For device reps, this created a new commercial argument. Implant systems with lower complication rates and faster rehabilitation timelines contributed to reduced episode cost and could be positioned accordingly. Total episode cost framing, the health economics commercial response. When implant unit price is the primary purchase criterion, device manufacturers face commoditization pressure that erodes margin and undermines differentiation. The total episode cost framework offers an alternative. Rather than defending a higher unit price on feature grounds, the rep quantifies the full cost implications of the implant decision across the episode. For SynTera, a pinnacle knee system with 10-year survivorship data 2 percentage points better than the competitors means fewer revisions, and each avoided revision saves the hospital $30, $50, $000 in procedure and hospitalization cost, 30 seconds of operative time saved per case from faster instrument sequencing, saves $25, $50/case times 800 cases equals $20, $000, $40, $000 annually in or time costs. These are legitimate economic arguments, not marketing claims, that require supporting data and analytical rigor. But they shift the conversation from "this implant costs $600 more" to "this implant saves $X in episode costs that exceed the price differential." Payer mix and its implications for device cost pressure intensity. The financial pressure on implant cost is not uniform across all hospital accounts. It depends heavily on the payer mix of the hospital's joint replacement patients. Medicare, DRG-based fixed payment, drives the most direct implant cost pressure. Commercial insurance contracts, either fee-for-service or similar fixed case rate structures, create varying levels of cost pressure depending on contract terms. Medicaid state-based, generally lower reimbursement, creates higher pressure than commercial but varies by state. A hospital with 65% Medicare payer mix in its joint replacement program faces strong DRG-driven cost management pressure. A hospital with 45% commercial insurance and relatively generous reimbursement contracts faces less acute cost pressure on implant selection. Agentforce payer mix data at the account level allows the rep to calibrate the cost vs outcome commercial conversation to the financial realities of each specific hospital, leading with total episode cost economics at high Medicare accounts, and leading with clinical differentiation at commercially insured accounts with more financial headroom.